Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation on the APY analysis for shrimps and seaweeds. This is Shlok Nemani, pre-final year student in the Department of Electrical Engineering at IIT Bombay and working as a research fellow in the Maritime Research Center. So before starting the presentation, let's have a quick look on the outline of this presentation. So we will be looking at the aquaculture and its notion in the UDA framework and the perspective of aquaculture in the Indian economy, followed by the core topic of the presentation that entails the APY analysis of the shrimps as well as seaweeds, followed by the non-conventional aquaculture, which involves the notion which we as a research community are trying to integrate technology for the farmers to improve their life. So let's begin with the first of them, which is aquaculture and the notion of aquaculture in the UDA framework. So in this broadly, we will be looking how aquaculture supports the aspects of blue economy and sustainable development by making justified use of the oceanic resources. So here I have introduced some terms like blue economy and sustainable development goals. So what are those? Let's start with the term blue economy. So to understand blue economy, it is important that we understand what's the UDA or the UDA framework. So, in short, in brief, the UDA framework encompasses the set of stakeholders which are associated with the maritime research, security, and development. So, in the context of aquaculture, we identified the following key stakeholders, including blue economy, the marine environment, and third, science and technology. So, science and technology is the pillar that supports the other stakeholders by the use of the knowledge as well as the technological interventions. Starting with blue economy. So this is the World Bank definition of blue economy, which states blue economy is the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihood and jobs while preserving the health of ocean ecosystem. So it not only focuses on the growth perspective, but also on the sustainable development of this whole infrastructure around the ocean ecosystem. So, what's the blue economy and what are its pillars? So, for to improvise the concept of blue economy, it is important that a precise research should be conducted because it can provide insights to explore the correct regions. Regions here states the farms where the aquaculture can be promoted to harness the true potential in that specific region. Second, what blue economy means to the ear of people who are directly related to the aquaculture. So this aquaculture development in a certain region, it also supports the source of employment to the people who are eager to work in this aquaculture industry. As a source of employment, it in turn returns a better life for those community people who are now engaging in some fruitful activities. And finally, a better life or a leisure time allows them to reach to the available technology through smartphone and gain a social connect with the overall world. So all these are possible because of an infrastructure or an ecosystem being developed around marine resources by exploiting them in a justified manner. And this is the true meaning of the blue economy. So why I am saying it is in a justified manner. So let's understand what are the consequences of our action. So this brings us to the notion of marine environment. So I would like to start it with the line that every action is associated with some consequences, either positive or negative. So talking about the negative consequences, so it is important that as a humans or the developing nation, we are aware of the consequences of the decisions which we make and are also sure that the effects or the adverse effects or any negative effects which we are going to face in the near future are well under the defined limits of the nature. So this is the important idea of a sustainable growth of an industry. And second, if we are trying to exploit marine resources in our own to gain or to get some returns, but if we do it in unjustified manner, then this will lead to the habitat degradation, which will in turn accelerate the loss of flora and the fauna, which depends on the flora. The both are interdependent, so it just tries to create a positive cycle where the loss finally leads to the complete destruction of the marine environment and the supporting ecosystem. And finally, how the science and technology can help the aquaculture to yield better returns, make it more sustainable. So the knowledge of and application of science, it helps us to understand the biochemical reaction and growth processes happening inside the marine organisms. So here the organisms which we are looking upon include shrimps and seaweeds, and thus in literature, in a very recent literature, by understanding the biological mechanisms happening inside shrimps and seaweeds, what are their byproducts. So this helped researchers to explain the benefits of a polyculture, and as ma'am explained, the concept of the IMTA, or integrated multi-trophic aquaculture. And the second, how the technology intervention and innovation can help, that it can collect the timely data from the farms, and also by using the growth modeling methods to get the idea of how much the production or the yield will be there, by using computer vision techniques or the IoT sensors as a camera as an endpoint, the machine learning on the cloud, the remote sensing to get the overall cover where the farms are being located. And all this is now available in real time, which can be disseminated to the stakeholders or the policymakers that can take insights from this data and can frame the policy accordingly. Coming to the second, the notion of aquaculture and its perspective in the Indian economy. So, in this broadly, we will be seeing how, in the perspective of Indian economy, why the associated organizations. So, organizations here means the organizations which are promoting the marine ecosystem or are working or showing efforts to conduct research in the growth of aquaculture. So whenever we talk about economy, we need some numbers to like get us optimistic in that sense. So in this, starting with the 30% growth witnessed by the marine food export industry in the fiscal year 2021-2022. So despite COVID disruptions, this was a huge annual growth rate which was witnessed in the previous financial year for the total marine food export industry. And out of the 8 billion, which was the part of the marine food export industry in 2021-2022, 75% of that was the frozen shrimps. So shrimps form a large bucket of the total exports of the seafood industry. So this makes shrimps, the production of shrimps, to be on a higher side, with also making it more sustainable, because there are a lot of disadvantage of growing shrimp, which we will be looking upon later. India ranks second in the global shrimps export, only after the Ecuador, which is located on America's west coast. Yeah, so as said by the director of ICAR and CMFRI, these are the two institutes which involves in research of the related with the aquaculture and agriculture. So they said that the director said that the global seaweed trade market was around of the value 16.5 billion USD US dollars. So this is a great opportunity for us to tap the farmers to get into aquaculture, to improvise their lives, because there is huge potential in based on the geographical location of India, and as well as the available land in the coastal region. And finally, the director also it makes us optimistic that India has a potential to produce around 10 million tons out of the 35 million tons which is being produced globally, and that makes us like around 30% of the total contributor to the global exports of the seaweeds. So there is a huge potential to be harnessed in terms of the global seaweed exports, which we are trying to tap with our research in a sustainable manner. So, ending it with the like, what are the policies and actions which are framed by these organizations to support the farmers to come into aquaculture? So, starting with the recent one of the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, which aims to invest 3 billion US dollars in the infrastructure development of marine fisheries and aquaculture. So, and they advise that around in the year 2024-2025, it would have generated 68 lakh jobs for Indian economy. So it's like win-win for both government as well as its people. Coming to the second, the inland aquaculture policy, it focuses on improving the productivity, which is the main concern, in order to make more production out of a certain land, and also ensures the environmental sustainability. The third, the National Fisheries Policy Act 2020. So it also promotes the sustainable development of fisheries sector in India, including the aquaculture. And it also focuses on marketing and promoting the research associated with this context. Now coming to the core of the topic, which is the APY analysis for shrimps as well as seaweeds. So in this, we will be discussing the concept of area production and yield analysis, along with the research outcomes and the limitations we face. So I'm saying a lot about shrimps and seaweed. So if someone in audience don't have any idea? So this is just a brief about it. So the shrimps are belonging to the zooplankton category. So they are a type of seafood which are consumed worldwide. And there are various delicacies made in various parts of the world which contain shrimp as the main item of the dish. And in the context of Indian Ocean region, we will be looking upon the L1 and Pinus monodon, the white leg shrimp and tiger shrimp, which are the most produced shrimp in the Indian Ocean. Coming to the seaweeds, so seaweeds on the other hand belong to the phytoplankton categories. There are like various uh, benefits of seaweeds, like it's the way the shrimp shows their harmful effects. The seaweeds on their other hands, their harmful effects are like it's very hard to count them. So they are very nutritious for consumption. They contain high amount of fiber. They hold very high intrinsic value. And the Capaphycus alvarezi, the red seaweed, and the Gracilaria edulis are the prominent seaweeds grown in the Indian Ocean region. So these also generate some of the very the high intrinsic value raw material for the industry, like uh, carrageenan, which is used. It is a red material, as well as the gelatin kind of material being generated. So these seaweeds are also having some intrinsic value for the raw material. And in Australia, the as a matter of fact, the startup also pitched the plant-based bacon. So they used proteins from red seaweed. So seaweed also has found their way to the plant-based meat industry. So what's APY? So APY is just a collective abbreviation of three important parameters which reflect the efficiency of any production unit, the area, production, and yield. For our analysis, we will be looking at each farm as a production unit. So the area is the total area under the production unit, the farm, for instance, and also for not only the farm, the associated waste land which is used for dumping this all this waste generated needs to be considered under area, because area is a scarce resource and it has to be used in a justified manner. The production is the total produce from any production unit, which is as obvious as it is, as it says. And yeah, in production, one thing to be remembered that all the production may not be economically valuable. There may be some byproduct of wastages. So only the thing which can be sold to the market is considered as a total produce. Yield is generally defined as the production per unit area, but it can also be extended to other input costs, like how much manpower is being employed by the industry, what is the social harmony disruptions in case there are disruptions between agriculture and aquaculture land use, and the climatic hazards of the aquaculture. But these are qualitative terms and very hard to quantify. So as of now, we will be looking on the yield also as a production per unit area. So now let's formalize APY briefly. So A is the land which is valuable and scarce resource. So the use of land should be economically justified for the stakeholders, as well as the environmentally sustainable in order to meet the UN SDG goals. The A refers to the study of available land in various locations of India by looking at the previous data and finding the feasibility of a land to be used for developing the aquaculture. Because like recently the CV for the from the director of ICAR CMFI, they are saying they are tapping around 340 regions in India to grow seaweed. So whether they are feasible or not have to be looked upon by analyzing how many in the associated regions, how many farms are there and how much they are producing. So the that will brings us to the second key factor, which is production. So as I have already explained, it is the production which is the which shows us how much is the total produced from an industry. So by analyzing production trends over a period of time, we can make some like forecast based on the compound annual growth rate. Are we able to meet our necessary goals against the top leaders in this industry, how much time it will take? And it also helps us to get hold of how the bad events or unfortunate events like some disease outbreak affected the production in past. So by correlating those events with the production trend can help us to mitigate adverse losses in the future. And finally, the most vast and important of three is the yield. So what it means is that we are trying to optimize the yield from the given land, which will maximize the produce and minimize the loss. So why it will maximize the produce? Because optimal yield will try to bring the mortality rate down, like the less number of shrimps will be dead. It tries to bring the more number of biomass of the seed being produced from the same field. by analyzing the effect of stocking density and minimize the loss. Loss means all the waste from the shrimp, like the dead shrimps are the waste because they are not economically valuable. So these kind of losses we are trying to minimize. And yeah, but there is a lot of dependence of yield on the environmental parameters, like how the shrimps and seaweeds react to the biological stress, where there is a very high sunlight intensity that burnt the surfaces of seaweed, or there is the salinity is not enough that seaweed kinetics could not support the amount of nitrogen or phosphorus salinity in the water, or the clarity is not enough that the sunlight reaches. So these all makes it very analytically toughest to be modeled. But yeah, this helps us to get the hold of the produce as well as yield trade-off. So this is the biological study of seaweed. So this is just more of the literature part of the technical part. So seaweeds related to the phytoplanktons have these parameters which affect their whole chemical processes happening inside them, and in turn the growth rate. So these all just are like somewhat like the as we saw for the plants. Just the thing is like the since seaweeds are grown underwater, so they extract the nutrient content from the water. So we will be looking upon some of the factors like salinity of water, the content of nutrient in the water, the motion of water, and yeah, the skill assistance is a one term which is very qualitative, but it is included because there are various methods like the raft method, the raft technology is being developed where the seaweeds are grown on raft. So how much is the days of culture for that? How the seeds should be planted? This all assistance needs to be given to the farmers, which is not there because seaweeds are a kind of we don't produce that much. We already only have around 35,000 tons of total produce in the recent years. So there is not much of the knowledge about seaweed. So we need to give the assistance also. And similarly for shrimps, we have as they are from the zooplanktons, they also depend on the feed which is being provided. So this optimal, we are trying to optimize this parameter that will yield the maximum return. So this is the abstract model of the what APY analysis does. So it is nothing but a non-linear input to output n cross one dimensional map where the n means the number of farm inputs including all these parameters, and the one means the output yield parameter. And this non-linear map were generated using the probabilistic and statistical modeling. We are also looking towards integrating some state of the art architectures that can help us to improvise it. So the weather and climate data is optional, as well as the satellite imaging data is what we are trying to integrate it into the APY analysis. But yeah, in the first part of the first iteration of the work, we are only looking upon the set of inputs from the sensors, this which affect the biological complex processes of the shrimps and seaweeds, and trying to get hold of the output. So the benefits of conducting APY research. So first, we are trying to tap the untapped. So the APY analysis can make it simpler to identify the regions with high potential for the cultivation of shrimps and seaweed. So that will make policymaker to make informed decision on building infrastructure, providing employment around this aquaculture industry. The second is the higher returns. Like more yield means more returns, lesser losses also means more returns. So this will help them to get most of their what the hard work they are doing. And the supporting cycle here, it means that the more returns will help policymakers to infuse more funds into the same industry. So, and that will encourage more farmers to come into the industry. So it is a positive cycle which creates the win-win for both people as well as policymakers, and in turn the economy. And finally, the comfortable lives, which is associated with the less need of the estimations on the inputs and the bad produce, because now the tool will provide everything like how much is the estimated production and what the values they should have for the inputs. So this is the final goal which we are trying to look in the whole term, where the APY analysis will be available on all devices, either as a web application or a app solution. So here's a small demo for the first iteration of the tool. Please have a look. Ma'am, I will do a voiceover on this, so it will help us to understand. So this is like the two different tools for shrimps as well as seaweed, the different modeling of each of them based on what farmer is growing. So let's say for seaweeds. So what are the input parameters we are able to quantify? So first of all, the species, which was like a qualitative, because we have two species which we are trying to model, the Gracilaria family and the Kappa ficus family. So the model was same for both because of the data constraints. But these are the parameters like the temperature, the stocking density, how much is the days of culture, the Sakai depth. If I talk about the Sakai depth, it is the clarity of the water. Like it mentions the clarity of the water. So clarity and Sakai depth have some kind of the exponential relationship. So that is being modeled. So if the Sakai depth is very high, so that means water is very clear. So, and the stocking density, if someone doesn't know, is the amount of biomass of seaweed being planted per meter square. And let's say the Sakai depth is being said. The water depth means the how much under the depth of the water surface the seaweeds are being planted. In various different technology, this water depth may be varying either if it is close to the surface or it is very far in the ocean. Yeah, so it gives the growth rate of the seaweeds, how much growth rate of the seaweed in terms of biomass can be seen, and it gives the per meter square the estimated biomass and the total biomass. So this per raft is in the raft technology. The government or the organizations have proposed a 3x3 meter raft. So the total biomass which the cultivator should expect from this should be around 153 kgs of the seed. So that helps him to manage his expenses on the total how much he is trying to cultivate. Now I'm going back to the shrimp one. So shrimp one was like more mature because of the higher amount of literature available, like about shrimp. The literature was available going back in around even in the decades of 1990s. But for the seaweed, since it's very kind of new kind of the thing which is trying to interest the newer kind of industries which are more towards a sustainable ecosystem. So these are the terms which I have already explained. Stocking density. The salinity is in the parts per million or the part per tons of the amount of nutrient contents, which are the salts, the nitrogens and phosphorus, the phosphates, and the pH. The leaving pH is around 7 to 8 for shrimps. Like it is kind of basic to neutral. In acidic, they like die. Like the acidic is not fine. And yeah, this is the for shrimps from the organizations, we also have some data that for L1 around 18 to 19 grams is kind of optimal. Like it can go up to 27 grams per shrimp. So that's also one kind of estimation. So we have taken the threshold values to around 17 grams. That if the final weight of the shrimp is less than 17, then it's non-optimal. And about the feed conversion ratio, so this was qualitative term. Like we are not able to really quantify unless and until there is a lot of amount of data of how much the farmers really feed to the shrimp. But yeah, the feed conversion is the amount of feed being given to the shrimp as well divided by the weight gain by the shrimp. So if it is very high, that means weight gain is very low and the shrimp have taken a lot of food. So that's not optimal because it increases the expenses. Overall, we get that the total biomass production in this case is. If we change these parameters to let's say like if we increase the temperature, the growth the rate decreases and the total biomass production decreases. So in this, like the overall idea was by inputting the parameters, the farmer get the idea of how much parameter he or she should maintain. In the first iteration, it was completely manual. There was no use of the endpoints. But yeah, if the API needs to be established, that can directly connect the data from the farms to this tool. And it will also help us to model it better because now there are no state of the art architectures like and neural networks or SVMs. But yeah, the more the data it produce, the more the data or the feedback we have, we will be able to update it in the iterations which we are currently working on. So let's just see the what are the current limitations which we are facing in our APY research. Is there is a slight unavailability of structured data which can give us the how much like these parameters and what is the produce from that farm, like what were the parameters being maintained and what were the yield from that farm. So because why there is no data, because there is no very much interest in this work. Like why would someone create a higher operating expenses just to collect this data. So this is the time that the research community tries to collect data by conducting in-house experiments or by setting up the infrastructure and get the required data. So that will help us to use random forest or neural networks to get accurate predictions. Like currently the tool focuses on the regression and the multivariable analysis, but we need to understand how much of these input parameters, which I am saying from the literature review, are really important. So we need to understand those. And finally, the lack of technology use. We still believe like it may be hard time for this sophisticated technology to travel the path. So we will be trying to keep the expenses as low as possible so that the farmers don't have to bear any kind of expenses. So the algorithm needs to be more novel. The algorithm needs to be more accurate because we are trying to keep the endpoint expenses low. So this model should work with a sensor which even gives a higher range of the error margins. So that will help us to employ a cheaper technology but with a better algorithm. So this brings us to final and the last part of the presentation. This is the non-conventional aquaculture, where we will be inculcating the research and technological innovations to make aquaculture more sustainable. So it is a notion which we as a research community are seeing to integrate it in the aquaculture. So these two, we can see that the shrimps has a lot of disadvantages on the environment. While the benefits of seaweeds are like a countless, or we can count any number of seaweeds benefits. So they are even having intrinsic value to the industries. They can help in the carbon de-sequencing, the water de-acidification. They are also used in the wastewater treatment, as well as some companies in Europe are also trying to make biofuel production. The cattle feed, they can, since it is nutritious, they can be used for cattle feed also, and they are also a food source for us. Like there are very delicacies that can be made from seaweed. On the other hand, the disadvantages of shrimps are many. Various mangrove destruction have already shown how the associated shrimp farm have completely destructed the ecosystem. So there are various examples in literature which actually proves the disadvantages of the shrimps. So what's the scenario which we are looking upon? We have already seen that at the spectrum of sustainability, shrimps is on the one hand, seaweed is on the other hand. So shrimps, the byproducts of the shrimps are very harmful because they contain acidic chemical components as well as salts. While on the other hand, the salinity of water containing nitrates, phosphates, it has the phytoplanktons with the vital minerals required for the optimum growth of these organisms. As well as seaweeds also provide a food source to the shrimp. So what if we try to combine that? So yeah, they can grow and live in situ. So this is the notion of the polyculture. The which This is one of the article which is latest, and it shows that even by using polyculture, let's say here D3 G2 means the highest amount of seaweed along with the shrimps. So it shows that the lowest amount of the mortality rate of around 17.8%. While on the other hand, with shrimps with no seaweed, the mortality rate of the penis family was around 75.6 percent. So it can be shown that with higher biomass of seaweeds along with shrimps, the mortality rate can be decreased. And in future, if there is some kind of virus outbreak, so we will be making our shrimps more resistant by use of this polyculture. It also significantly decreased the content of nitrogen and phosphorus compounds because the bioproducts which are from the shrimps are now used by the seaweeds for their own growth, and it also enhances the survival, as I have mentioned, for the pea monodon at higher stocking. Now we can also increase the stocking density. This was all conducted in a controlled environment, as they have mentioned. So yeah, the effect to be seen in the farm have to be conducted later. So this is the notion of a final as a CV farm which we are looking. So it tries to integrate computer vision, the sensors to track the environmental parameters, and the cloud-based machine learning so that there is uninterrupted processing of the data and timely alerts to be sent to the farmers. So this do make use of the IoT devices. This do bear some of the fixed cost that needs to be bear by the cultivators or some organizations. But yeah, this improvise the whole ecosystem of the aquaculture, which we are looking in terms of a modern aquaculture as a non-conventional. So it's not only me. This work, there are a lot of research efforts in the backend going by Siddhant. my peer, Sarita ma'am, who is looking on the biological understanding and finding of seaweed for the modeling of the growth, how they interact. Sanskar, his work ideated us to bring the spatio-temporal maps for the Indian Ocean region, and the work by Shelja ma'am helps us to align our work along the lines of Sustainable Development Goals and UDF framework. So with this, it was a long presentation, but I thank you for listening to it, and I conclude it with the remark that this is a high time that we try to improvise the lives of those who are trying to produce the food or the nutritious food for us. So with this, thank you for listening to my presentation. Thank you. I am open for any questions.
Thank you, Shlok.
Yeah.
Any questions? Devlina ma'am, your comments, and then I'll go to Ashwin sir.
No, I mean, it looks fairly interesting, and also the research that has been done in the polyculture that Shlok mentioned, and we have been also kind of discussing it. And again, it's the addressing this shrimp disease that has been a big impediment to the export sector, the fisheries export sector in India. 60% of fish exported from India is actually Venami. And any kind of disease that affects Venami impacts our exports largely. So if this can be established, this has a big potential for really improving, improving not only exports but also tapping into the economy as well. So that is interesting to see. I would like to understand if this can be done in a larger scale, at least the pilot, and establish some kind of governing principles around that. So, but commend the work done so far, and I like the various structured way that the team is working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, ma'am, as you said, we have built with the support of Excel Industries, we have built the basic framework. And now the next level, as you and me have been discussing, is to go to the field and then validate the model. And I think typically in many places in India, we see that we have not relied on modeling and simulation so much. But I think it's time, and today with the kind of computational infrastructure that is available, large-scale modeling and simulation needs to be done, and iteratively it has to be validated. I mean, it's not that you do a lot of it and then at some point you go for validation, but it has to be done simultaneously. We build a model, go to the field and come back and improve the model, and so that once the reliability of the model becomes better, then I think the cost effectiveness will be unimaginable. So certainly, I mean, as you said, we in the next stage we would like to deploy it and then take it forward. So I mean, this as part of this workshop, also the idea of we going to the field is to also understand the whole ecosystem and then kind of build collaborations to then start putting those sensors and the validation mechanism in place.
Well, first of all, Shlok, very good presentation, very good. We have studied it quite a lot. You have a wonderful name, Shlok. So I believe that you will create not only one Shlok but many Shlokas. So wish you all the best. I've respected Devlina for her knowledge and the way she has combined the data management along with the fishery, which is an ocean-based activity. So you are also a data bhakt. So you are also wanting to use data.
Yes.
And like she came from fisheries into seaweed, you are studying both of them simultaneously and seeing the synergy between them. So I think as we are discovering that sometimes nature can support each other, sometimes it can be. So whom to keep separate and whom to keep together. So I think a lot of valuable lessons that you have created. As you rightly said, that the data is now very much an accepted fact, and a lot of things work on data. But while the data on shrimp is available, the data on seaweed is not much available. So we need to generate data, which, as Dr. Das said, that now the time to take the knowledge that we have, let's say, in the classrooms or in our offices needs to be tested on the ground and see the correlation. Maybe corrections might come. Some
Yeah.
mistakes might be there, which we might have to rectify. But I think the base is very sound. That digitization, use of IT for many things is anyway taking place. Fishery is a relatively established industry. Seaweed is a relatively new industry, but there's a lot of synergy, and the ocean has a kind of common resource. I think I would, and I don't know whether you are based in Mumbai or where are you based?
Sir, I am currently in Mumbai only, like, in my college.
Yeah, and you are a IIT Bombay wala, right?
Yeah, yes.
Right. So we are also a Mumbai wala. So I would like to welcome you to visit us and
Yes.
give a small talk, because today only me and Devlin have benefited. But we have many colleagues. We have a group of about 25 people. So all of us would like to hear you and look forward to your ideas, your vision, your thoughts, so that we can use it properly.
Sure.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Incidentally, I was last week in IIT Bombay.
Oh, okay, sir.
IIT Bombay is starting what they want to call is Center of Excellence for Circular Economy.
Oh,
So
yeah,
they
yeah,
wanted
yes, sir.
some ideas. So
Okay.
I was there as part of the panel, and we had generated some good ideas. But I would say this is probably the best idea, the seaweed. So
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. It will help to, like, there are a lot of people working in this domain, like to model the mathematical models for every kind of growth patterns, not for the biological organisms, but if something is established, then there are like good minds, even more better than me, who are enthusiastic towards this. So that will help to take this to a very high level, like, in just a matter. Yes.